Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Hey guys, let's learn preemptive like Vox. Original link to the video from Vox, top of the description as always. Discord, other stuff below that. My name's Connor if you're new. Why U.S. elections only give two choices? Only two parties. Well, no, you can run as a different party, I guess, but it's just you don't stand a chance. I think it needs to change. I'm not saying you need to have a dozen parties, okay? But I think having more than two would allow people to express their opinion a bit more than other than just having to settle with, well, what we have right now. I hate both parties. They both suck. That's
in the U.S.
Let's go.
We basically have two choices in elections. And listen, it's not going amazing.
Government shutdown.
Split Congress. Great divide.
Cannot agree.
Too polarized. Big majorities don't want either one of them running.
Big majorities of us actually don't want the two-party system at all. We want more options. But a lot of the time, we actually do have more options. It's just that when it comes time to vote for them, we mostly don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to repeat what I said. It's just, you have to seriously hate both people, because even if you don't like the party you usually vote for, you're going to really dislike the other one. You get what I mean.
Can't. In our system, voting for a third party helps the party you least agree with. It's just a protest vote. But there's a way we could make it more than that. We just need to take a closer look at this.
Well, Electoral College. But
New England, the northeastern region of the
guys, me. Well, New England doesn't get enough shout-outs, so when they do, I get excited.
U.S.
Sorry.
New England.
There I am.
The northeastern region of the U.S. About 15 million people live here. These 6 states send 21 representatives to Congress. And in the 2022 congressional elections, 36% of voters here voted for Republicans. But none of this region's 21 representatives are Republicans.
It means that the perspective of the New England Republicans, who have historically been fiscally conservative and more socially progressive, is not reflected in Congress.
This is because of the way we elect representatives to Congress, where every representative comes from a different district. Each district holds its own election, and in each election, the person who gets the most votes wins. These are winner-take-all elections, and they produce this result all over the country. Take the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has 5 congressional districts. It votes 1/3 Democratic. It has no Democratic representatives. And before we start blaming gerrymandering for this, in other words, the shape of these districts, in Massachusetts, which I admit does look kind of gerrymandered, a group of independent mapmakers looked at this situation, and they tried to draw new district maps that would give Republicans...
It's like with it. It's like, what is the... I want to know the reasoning behind this sliver here. I mean, what makes these areas on either side of this, you know, electoral or district peninsula here? Like, what... And I'm not just picking on Massachusetts, all right? I love Massachusetts. But what's the reasoning? Anyways.
It does look kind of gerrymandered. A group of independent mapmakers looked at this situation, and they tried to draw new district maps that would give Republicans some representation here. But they found that though there are more ways of building a districting plan than particles in the galaxy, every single one would produce a 9-0 Democratic delegation.
Interesting.
And now imagine if in every single House race, there was also a really popular third party getting 25% of the vote in every district in the country. That party would earn 0 seats in Congress.
If you ask yourself, why haven't you voted for a third party? Most of the time is, well,
what's the point?
They don't really have a chance. Our system, by its very nature, precludes political competition.
But most democracies don't actually work this way. In In 2021, a German center-right party called the Free Democratic Party won about 90 seats in Germany's parliament. German federal elections have about 300 constituencies that work sort of like America's districts, with each one electing.
I'm curious if any of these are, it looks like the Holy Roman Empire. If any of them are similar or like the same as the states in the Holy Roman Empire. I'm probably not. Just
390 seats.
It's not off topic. Sorry.
In Germany's parliament. German federal elections have about 300 constituencies that work sort of like America's districts, with each one electing a single representative. Okay. And out of every one of those races, the Free Democratic Party did not win a single one. But Germany uses a form of what is called proportional representation.
Proportional representation means that a share of votes gets you a share of seats.
These are four common types of proportional representation, and one way to understand each of them is, are you voting for a person or are you voting for a party? So at one end of that spectrum, in a closed list system, like they use in Spain, for example, you might not even vote for a candidate, you just vote for a party. Each party wins some percentage of the vote, and those percentages each translate into a certain number of seats. The people who fill those seats come off of each party's list, so voters don't get to choose those candidates. That's the closed part.
Is this kind of like how, isn't this kind of how the Prime Minister in the UK is picked? It's like you vote, or is that not a great comparison? You vote for people that go in, but then they choose the Prime Minister if they're the head of a party. Maybe not the best comparison.
But there are also open list systems, which are maybe the most common, used in places like Finland, Belgium, Denmark. A standard version of this is you vote for a person, and your vote counts towards a larger party total, sort of like we saw before, determining how many seats each party gets. But in open list, you do choose the candidates. The seats go to the people in each party who got the most votes. Germany uses a system. But in open list, you do choose the candidates. The seats go to the people in each party who got the most votes.
Okay.
Germany uses a system called mixed member proportional. Mixed because in their system you cast two votes, for a person and for a party. Each district elects one person, and those people fill some of the seats in parliament. But the rest of the seats are filled by looking at the party vote.
Is it really going to differ? I mean, if you're voting for a person, I'm assuming you're going to also vote for the party that person is in.
And then doling the remaining seats out to the parties until the end product is proportional to the party vote.
Jesus Christ, I gotta stop pausing.
Are filled by those people fill some of the seats in parliament, but the rest of the seats are filled by looking at the party vote, and then doling the remaining seats out to the parties until the end product is proportional to the party vote. And the last one we'll look at is the one that Ireland uses to elect its legislature.
My thing is there is like, why even are there enough people that actually vote for the party that the person they voted for individually is not in? Enough people do that in order to even have the party vote? Because why not just take the party of the person they voted in?
And the last one we'll look at is the one that Ireland uses to elect its legislature. And this is actually a version of something we're already starting to do in some congressional and local races in the U.S.
Ranked choice.
Ranked choice voting.
In ranked choice voting, instead of just voting for one person, you rank multiple candidates. It's a system that encourages you to vote for smaller parties and less established candidates, because if your first choice is unpopular, they use your second choice.
I like this a lot. And I learned this in a Mr. Beat video I watched about different kind of election styles, procedures. I like this because so many people end up just like voting, like we said earlier, even if you identify more with a third party candidate in the US, like a libertarian party or whatever, you know how little chance that actually person actually getting in. And so why not just contribute your vote to the person in the party that has a chance, either the Republican or the Democrats? And this way, that way is the way of our kind of two parties where only two really matter, it makes it so you don't really get a feel for how people really feel about politics when they're really just doing a kind of surrender vote, you know? And this way you can still vote for the person who you think has a chance, but also show your opinions and see what other potential parties or candidates are popular outside of the mainstream. And so I think this is super good for just getting a pulse on the voter base and how they think about parties other than the two. I hope I explained that okay.
Less established candidates, because if your first choice is unpopular, they use your second choice vote, and that process repeats itself until a certain threshold is reached. On its own, though, ranked choice voting doesn't necessarily make these smaller candidates that much more likely to actually win.
That's not what I care about. I agree, but you get an idea for potentially good ideas without compromising your vote to go for the likely person to win.
They will be at a disadvantage in any election that only one person can win. But if you lower the threshold of victory in a ranked choice race, that produces multiple winners, more proportional to the vote. All of these systems have different formulas for turning votes into representation. What they have in common is they all distribute power proportionally, instead of just relying on this. Now, you'll notice we spent the last few minutes talking about Congress and Parliament's legislatures. Presidential elections can definitely be made more fair. That is another video. But they will always, by definition, be single winner elections, most likely to be won by the more established parties. But if Congress is more representative and less polarized, it could change the whole partisan dynamic around the presidency.
Right now, if the president wants to pass a law, he or she, with rare exceptions, needs both Democrats and Republican Party support. But if there were 3 or 4 or 5 parties in Congress, that would open up far more coalitional possibilities and combinations to pass laws.
I think that is just so much more healthy. Just not having to just bow down to the leader of a party if you kind of disagree with. I think that's just sounds way more healthy.
Key to making this happen will be taking these single winner elections that we use to elect Congress and replacing them with multi-winner elections that pick, say, 3 to 5 people to represent a district. For example, Oklahoma, now 5 congressional districts, could act as a single district, holding an election that 5 people can win. It would still mostly be represented by Republicans, just not exclusively.
But who goes to Congress?
Another option is that we could keep many of our current districts and just make Congress bigger, to use each district to elect more representatives. But okay, how do we actually do any of this? Federal law currently says that no congressional district can elect more than 1 representative. So to make Congress more representative, that is what we'll need to change.
The thing I'm wondering, though, is that you're voting to get someone to have a voice in Congress and have a vote in Congress based on the population. And if you, so what is let's say 3 people can win. The person who comes in first, second, and third place get to go to Congress. But that means that the first, second, and third place person all get 1 vote. That doesn't sound fair at all. I mean, what? Because then the minority of the people in the state who voted for someone, like what? So if someone gets 400 votes, another person gets 450 votes, and then another person gets 1,200 votes, they all just get 1 vote, and what's the point of even winning the election at that point?
But that change needs to be more representative. So to make Congress more representative, that is what we'll need to change. But that change needs to be made by Congress.
Wait a second. What if you did it so that, like, you can send 3 people, the top 3 that win, but when you go to Congress, your vote counts as a decimal. So, like, if you win 83% of the vote, that means you go to Congress with a 0.83 points that you can contribute to a voting. And so you can have different people, and then the person who got like one with 10% gets 0.1. And so it's kind of even that way, and you still get representation from all the views. Does that make sense?
When the country is struggling to even agree on small things, it can feel really unthinkable. But then there are plenty of indicators that being a member of Congress is pretty miserable these days. Changing the system would let members focus on the reasons they ran for Congress in the first place, serving their community, making sure they get things done.
But there are other ways to change things too. The states each choose how their own state legislatures get elected. Cities choose how their city councils get elected, and the hurdles to changing those are much, much lower.
The more experiments we can try, the more different forms of proportional representation we can implement in the United States, I think the better ultimately our democracy will be.
This rule feels really simple.
Yes, but let's not just go in tossing, like, put one system in, another one out. I think that could be unhealthy, of just like tearing down everything and just throwing something else in, and then having somebody we don't like and be like, okay, I think experimentation is okay, but you got to have some limitation on how often it changes, or it just seems chaotic.
Or different forms of proportional representation we can implement in the United States, I think the better ultimately our democracy will be.
This rule feels really simple, but that simplicity, it hides a lot of problems.
We're one of the oldest, if not the oldest democracy in the world, right? All these different other democracies, most of the world's democracies, are using a system that's better. We just need to update our system.
Interesting.
Thanks for watching.
Really interesting video from Vox. I think this stuff is fascinating. A lot of other things I think are fascinating, but politics, as I guess as I get older, it becomes more interesting. Yeah, I'd appreciate any comments, guys, whatever you guys think, have to say, any answers to questions I might have had. Hope you're all doing well, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Bye.